only guessing that. We talked earlier.
Right. Yeah, because then it will expire.
Okay, good evening. It is, welcome to our regularly scheduled meeting of the Wooster City Council being held this evening, Monday, December 16th. Obviously, we are here in council chambers and live streamed on YouTube. It is after 7 o'clock, and I apologize for all that we are a few minutes later than that due to a committee meeting that ended right at 7. And our next regularly scheduled council meeting will be held on Monday, January 6th of 2025. With that, Ms. Hamilton, would you please call the roll of the council members?
Mr. Abernathy.
Here.
Mr. Gaffey.
Here.
Mr. Huzay.
Here.
Ms. Knappich.
Here.
Mr. Malta.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Warden.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum, and the agenda will remain as presented. At this time, I'd ask you to stand with the members of the council and recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can I have a motion from council for the approval of the minutes from our last meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Huzay,
Second.
second by Mr. Gaffey. All in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Communications from the mayor. Mr. Mayor, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. President, council members. Not things, we're in that season where a lot of events that are holiday focused and fewer business meetings, so maybe a shorter report than normal. I told you before that there was a meeting on December 3rd with Judge Wiles. John Scavelli participated, so did Scott Boyce from the hospital. This is on the subject of adult guardianships, which is really an issue countywide. We're talking about ways to address it, and the lack of enough adult guardians really poses a problem for the city, for the court system, for the hospital. So I think we had a good discussion, and again, hopefully there's a way forward there. That same night, we had the Athena Awards. We talked about that before. We had a nice turnout from the city. Ashley's not here that we can embarrass, but she did a very nice job and made us all proud, as she does quite often. A couple groundbreaking for the Humane Society. They're doing an expansion there. That was a nice event. And the Historical Society had a holiday open house that I know some council people made it to. That was very well done. We had last week then, the Christmas Run Pool had a planning meeting or a public input meeting at the Freelander Chalet. This was to look at not the pool layout itself, but for the bells and whistles that would go with it. So basically an opportunity, and again, Ashley ran this, Phil was there, as well as a couple other people from Parks Department, and they laid out different options available and solicited comments from the people attending as to the features on the pool they would like to see. So we'll see what they have to come with that. I expect that what we'll get is a recommendation from Parks, and then this body's going to get to decide, whether what we go with that. Mr. Myers was present there. There is nothing that was involved there I would put on the cheap side. We're going to spend money no matter what we do. We have a decision to make whether we want to spend some amount of money or a whole lot of money. And there's an opportunity to spend a whole lot of money if we should so choose, but we'll get to that issue when the time comes. On the 12th, the Main Street had their annual recertification meeting. They're basically, I'm not going to call it a franchise, but they have an umbrella organization that they're run through, and every year they have to go through a recertification process. And this is I've been involved with Main Street a long time, but this is the first time I've first 2 years, I've been part of that recertification process. And not surprisingly for those of us that are familiar with Main Street, but the parent organization sees them as kind of a model for how the rest of the Main Streets in Ohio should be run. And so that's, it's one of those things but it's always good to hear. Same day I got the opportunity, Wooster Community Hospital has a nice little feature where they will hand out holiday meals to all their employees over the course of the day. And depending on when your shift is, I think you can get one at the start of your shift and at the end, because they do it at noon, at 6, and at midnight. I only signed up for the 6 o'clock one, but over the course of the day, they handed out 800 meals there. So that was a nice event, opportunity to talk to a lot of the staff on a one-to-one basis that you don't always get. And then Friday, John Rice and I got to travel to Mansfield to the District 16 Ohio Public Works Commission. John and I are taking personal credit for bringing back, in that budget that you went through, you saw some OPWC funds. That was all due to John and I, but if we hadn't gone there, I don't know we'd get it. But we got $308,000 in a grant and $191,000 in an interest-free loan. When I say I was being facetious, of course, we went there, I got a vote on a package that was put together. They have a formula they use, but it was kind of educational for me, maybe not so much for John, his old hat for him, but to see how that process works. And it's basically how and Joel or John will correct me if I'm wrong here, how the state of Ohio divvies up their capital improvement funds on a district-wide basis, and then within that district, county by county. So it was of interest to me, I guess, to learn a little bit more about how government funding works on a bigger scale. And then finally, this morning, we had a WARCOG meeting, and probably the thing of interest there is we passed the 2025 budget, so we're looking forward to moving into the new year there. Just a couple things coming up in the rest of the year. I think council should have got this yesterday, but tomorrow is the deadline to vote for the Name the Snowplow contest.
Yes.
Ashley, again, I think put this together, her department, and council is included on that, so you have the chance to vote too. The finalists are Ariana Snow Day, Snow Monster, Buzz Ice Clear, and Frosty the Snowplow. So get your vote in, and we'll find out the winner later this week. The 19th, Triway is opening up the new high school, or not opening up, they're having a ribbon cutting. And that's kind of, to some extent, obviously outside the town, but we have a lot of our community, the work employees, even residents. Mr. Gaffey's in that boat. That's a big deal for the community. So looking forward to attending that. And I know a lot of effort went into, that's been decades in the making for them. They've really worked at that for a long time and fought a lot of battles to get there, but they're finally there. Friday, we have our annual CRA Housing Committee meeting. Jonathan's running that, and we'll have a report for council at the end of that, and so you hear more about that then. And then at the end of the year, it's transition time, so we have a bunch of retirement parties for public officials on their way out, and swearing-in ceremonies for officials on their way in. Of course, we're not on that rotation, so it's all county-wide officials or state officials, so that takes care of that. A quick agenda review. We have 2 items related to the Silver Road TIF that were tabled at our last meeting because a statutory notice period had not run. That's now been satisfied. In fact, it was satisfied within a few days after that meeting. But those are ready to come off the table, and they'll be on 3rd reading if you choose to do so. We have 3 other items on 3rd reading: the 2025 budget, the extension of the recreational marijuana facility moratorium, and amendments to the management benefits provisions that were discussed. As regards to the budget, again, I want to commend Mr. Abernathy. We had another constructive committee meeting beforehand. We had a discussion earlier in the day internally, and there was questions about whether or not we'd have enough information to fill 30 minutes. And not only did we do that, but we ran over. So I thought it was a great discussion and good questions. And I think we're all a little better informed about the budget now than we were going in. When I say we, I think Joel and Andre had it down. I didn't as much. I think council people are better informed now. But so we've had that it's been over a month now. We've had 2 committee meetings, and I hope we're prepared to go forward with that tonight. We have 8 items on first reading. All but the third item, which is 2024-98, will require 3 readings or a suspension of the rules. Items 1 through 5 and item 8 are ones that aren't necessarily emergency items, but on each of those, I know the managers are kind of anxious to get moving on those. I'll leave it to your discretion as far as how fast you want to move those along. Item 8's a little bit confusing, and Mr. Abernathy will explain a little more about that, and my comment on that is it's kind of government red tape at its best. Finally, I'll just end by saying this is our final meeting of the year, and it's, from my standpoint, I don't know about yours, but I feel like the year's flown by. I want to thank all of council for your patience in working with a new mayor, and I think things have gotten more smooth as the year has gone by. You may feel differently, but I feel like I am much better informed about what this job entails than I was back in January. I think that collectively, we've got a lot accomplished, and we have much to be proud of, but there's always room for improvement, and my expectations for 2025 for both myself and the city administration as a whole, including council, city government as a whole, is that we continue to make Worcester a place where people want to come to work, to live, and raise their families. So with that, Mr. President, back to you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Next item is petitions, which we have none. We also do have a communication from the public related to agenda item 2024-92. Mr. Musgrave, I'm going to step up to the podium there and go ahead and fill us in, please.
Yeah, thank you all for your time. My name is Guy Musgrave. I'm the Director of Operations for the Botanist Retail Dispensaries here in Ohio. We have 5 Canton, Akron, Cleveland, Wycliffe, and Columbus. I just wanted to point out a couple key points prior to the final reading tonight. So first off, we have 188 individuals in our POS database with Worcester addresses. We attempted to contact every single one of them via phone. We were able to reach 76. Of those 76, 72 gave me permission to contact you all on their behalf. You may have seen emails from me. I sent out a few, but ultimately asked that they contact you directly. So hopefully you heard from some of them too. My point here is that there are upwards of 200 Worcester residents that are traveling upwards of an hour to a dispensary. And that's just mine. They could be going to a different one that I just simply don't have. The second thing I want to touch on is I know that some of you might have had concerns about banking and money. There are virtually no cash transactions from vendor to vendor. Every cultivator, every dispensary has a bank account. Everything's paid via ACH, and that, I guess, level of legitimacy would transfer to the host community cannabis fund. All of that money, again, 3.6% of adult use sales. We're projecting like $150K to the city of Worcester every year, maybe for some radios, maybe for some meters, who knows? That would come directly from the Ohio Department of Taxation. We pay them via their portal every month, and then they would distribute that, I would assume monthly. I'm honestly not quite sure how that works. But again, no, we really don't have that much cash on hand. We get it picked up every week. Armored vehicle, they come and pick it up, and that's that. And lastly, I want to emphasize that extending the moratorium at this point is essentially a permanent ban. I think that the city of Worcester saw that when they elected to allow for medical dispensaries to come. You had elected to allow those dispensaries to come after the licenses were awarded. Those licensees had established their places. They weren't going to move, and therefore, it's how many years down the road, and you still don't have a medical dispensary. It's just the nature of how it is. Now, fast forward to the adult use program. There are no new licenses to be awarded. They've already been awarded. There are no other dispensaries looking to come into Wayne County. I believe that we're the only one, based on everybody that we've talked to. And there aren't going to be any more, again, new licenses awarded. That's it. Thank you all very much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you.
All right, thank
very
you.
much.
Committee reports. Mr. Abernathy.
We had a finance committee meeting, and the budget has been presented, and we'll vote on it tonight. The end.
I like short and sweet. That works for me.
And we have no public hearings. We'll move straight into unfinished business, which the first item that's on the agenda is ordinance 2024-30, which is currently on the table. And so at this point, I think before I can have Ms. Hamilton read that, I'll need to have someone motion, and then we'll have to roll call vote to approve bringing it off the table.
That's correct. Someone should make a motion to take that off the table. and-
I'll motion to take it off the table.
Okay,
Second?
second by Ms. Knappich.
Mr. President, I need to recuse myself as well, so I don't think I should be involved in the table
Yes,
vote.
Yes, if you.
That's
if you feel
fine.
that you think you should recuse yourself, yes, you
Yep,
should not be
yeah,
involved in this
yeah,
matter.
understood. Want to call the roll on the,
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
yes.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Okay. So it is now back on, or it's off the table, and with that, Ms. Hamilton, please read it for us.
Ordinance number 2024-30, creating the Silver Road Tax Increment Financing Incentive District, declaring improvements to the parcels within the incentive district to be a public purpose and exempt from real property taxation, requiring the owners of those parcels to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvement tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of those service payments, specifying the public infrastructure improvements that benefit or serve parcels in the incentive district, and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Abernathy, the floor is yours.
All right, this is the finance arm of the TIF, the Silver Road project. This is our third reading. Does anybody wish to have any further conversation, ask any additional questions in regards to this particular piece of legislation? Seeing none, I motion
Motion to adopt?
to adopt, yes.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second. Doesn't matter.
Second, Mr. Meyer. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance has been approved. Next item, we will need a motion to bring it off the table.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Knappich. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Okay. With that, Ms. Hamilton, please read it for us.
Ordinance number 2024-31, approving the execution and delivery of a development agreement with the Wooster Development Company 2 LTD.
All right, Mr. Abernathy, the floor is yours.
All right, this is the execution and infrastructure side of the Silver Road development. Do we need any additional conversation or any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second?
Second, Mr. Gaffey. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Okay. So your TIF is approved.
You can still come back to meetings, though.
And Mr. Huzet has come back and joined us. All right. Next item, ordinance 2024-35. If you'll read it for us, Ms. Hamilton.
Ordinance number 2024-35, an ordinance appropriating from various funds to individual accounts for the current expenses and other expenditures for the city of Worcester for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2025, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Abernathy, the floor is yours.
This is the 2025 Worcester budget. We had a good discussion for about an hour earlier in the Finance Committee meeting. I will once again ask, is there any additional conversation or comment from City Council? Hearing none, motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt, is there a second?
Second?
Second by Ms. Warden. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Okay. We have a budget for next year. Fantastic.
Woo-hoo. It's always good to have that.
All right, Resolution 2024-92. It's also, this is its last reading. And Ms. Hamilton, if you'll please read it for us.
Resolution number 2024-92, a resolution extending a moratorium on the granting or processing of permits for any building, structure, use, or change of use that would enable cultivation, processing, or retail sale of marijuana within the city of Worcester and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Knappich, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. This issue has been discussed at very many hearings and meetings, and I made myself some notes, so I'm not redundant, and I say everything that I want to say. First of all, in researching this issue, I've talked to police officers, judges, ministers, doctors, psychologists, addiction specialists, dispensaries' neighbors, recovering addicts, bankers, and I've done this in Ohio, Michigan, Colorado, California, and Washington State. So if you want to know anything about medical marijuana in those states, I have a pretty good grasp of it. I've reviewed statistics on work injuries, motor vehicle accidents, the number of children who've been treated for ingestion, and quite frankly, I've come to the decision that except for moral outcry, there are more reasons to allow a dispensary in the city of Worcester than to not. And my reasoning is this. If we institute a 2-year moratorium, as our speaker said today, Worcester will not ever get a dispensary because of the way the licensing is. And our rationale was to sit back and wait for 2 years to see what everybody else does. By doing that, we will be missing this opportunity. I happen to follow and believe in old-fashioned Republican values of small government and free market, of allowing individuals to make their own decisions for themselves and for their children. I think they are responsible for themselves and their children, not the government. I don't believe the government has a place in dictating morals unless there is an imminent danger. And in this instance, the research and facts do not indicate an imminent danger in the city of Worcester. While not going down the rabbit hole of competing research and data and anecdotal stories, because we have many of those, the research data is clear, and I can provide this. Cigarettes are more addictive and harmful to everyone, particularly children, but are legal and relatively easy for someone under the age of 21 to access. Think about the number of people who smoke who just leave their cigarettes out. You can buy them at gas stations. You can buy them at grocery stores. You can buy them pretty much everywhere. We don't regulate those. Alcohol is more addictive and harmful than cannabis, especially to children, yet it's fairly accessible to people under the age of 21. We have alcohol in gas stations. We have alcohol in grocery stores. We have our state liquor store in Bueller's. I've seen people with their babies in carts in the state liquor store in Bueller's. Vape shops And of course, we have alcohol in stores, gas stations, drive-throughs, groceries, restaurants, vape shops. We only just paid attention to vape shops the last meeting we had. Vape shops in Worcester are currently offering, and I know because I went into every single one of them, offering what they call THC products. Now, vape shops are not legally permitted to sell THC products, but they have them in their stores. These are products that no one controls them. There's no age limit who can purchase those, and all kinds of people, when I was there, all kinds of ages were in these stores. So the idea that if we have a dispensary, it will be open to children, I think is not correct. Anyone who has been to a legal dispensary in any state, and I have, I can tell you, they are much nicer, they are much more secure, they are much more regulated and controlled than vape shops, alcohol stores, and where they can sell cigarettes. Voting on a moratorium will not stop the use of marijuana. What it will do is it'll either drive it underground, where people will still get it off the street, and they will be subject to whatever chemicals, fentanyl or whatever is in that product that they buy on the street, or they'll go out of state or wherever, and we will miss out on that income. I feel it would be very hypocritical for me if I'm voting to waive hearings on alcohol permits when alcohol-related accidents and health issues and deaths are far more significant than those associated with the use of cannabis. But then voting against the sale of another I would feel hypocritical if I'm voting for waivers on hearings for liquor permits, but yet voting not to allow another substance, which is also legal, to be sold in our city. I just couldn't do that. And it concerns me because as Americans, we permit citizens to make their own decisions about what they partake in or don't partake in as long as it's legal. Nobody's telling anyone, you can't go into that restaurant and have a beer. That's bad for you. The city's not saying, you can't go to that drive-through and buy a wine cooler because it's bad for you. And we don't do that because we trust our citizens to know what is right and what is wrong. And it is not, my opinion again, not our position to make those decisions for them or for their families. As long as it's legal, that is a personal right and freedom. And again, my position, I do not think it's the government's place to legislate morals. That's the family's place, that's the church's place, and that's what we should allow them to do. Finally, I think we're going to be very short-sighted in passing this moratorium. As the gentleman said today, there is a great deal of tax money that we would be leaving on the table, tax money that we won't get if we pass this moratorium. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially a year in tax dollars for this city for selling a legal substance from a storefront that you won't even see. They don't do the big vape flags and signs and neon. You've probably driven by multiple dispensaries and never even known they were there. But here, we don't get that kind of money from cigarettes. We don't get that kind of money from the vape shops, and we don't get that kind of money from the sale of alcohol. But yet, we're willing to pass that money up. And I just can't reconcile, for me, why if we're going to exclude one thing, we don't exclude them all. I can't reconcile that. the city of Worcester would be voluntarily passing on hundreds of thousands of tax dollars per year. And I could say if this was any other business that came into the city of Worcester and said, we can provide to you new jobs and hundreds of thousands of dollars of new tax revenue, we would be crazy not to jump at it. And the only reason we haven't is because we have a vocal minority that morally is opposed to this. But I would say to that vocal minority, your children will not be going there because you raise your children right. Your family members will not be going there because you don't believe in that. But you don't have the right to tell someone else they can't. Now, I've talked to many people who have reached out and contacted me who are medical marijuana users. They use it for pain. I talked to a veteran who uses it for PTSD. I've talked to another veteran who's an amputee who uses it for pain. This is for medicinal purposes. And if it's for recreational purposes, again, if it's highly regulated, the security is strong, and it is extremely strong. You don't walk into a dispensary without proper identification, and everything is kept behind counters. And you don't walk out of there with anything until you've been thoroughly checked. If this were any other business, the city of Worcester would be all over it. As a good steward of the city's budget and resources, I cannot in good conscience vote for this moratorium. Going over our 10-year budget and our 2025 budget today, I can see where the city could use this influx of thousands of tax dollars annually. And if it comes from a dispensary that is legal for people to buy these from a dispensary where it is legal, then who buys it and for what purposes, again, in my opinion, is none of the government's business. It is none of my business. So I am going to vote no on this moratorium. Are there any other comments from any other council people before we take a vote?
Yeah, I just want to say that I plan to vote for the moratorium. I think Worcester is a leader in a lot of things. I don't think Worcester needs to be a leader to allow recreational marijuana. And I think, to your point, Barb, recreational marijuana existed long before Issue 2 was passed in this city.
Just after.
And it will exist after. I don't think this is hindering anybody's ability to partake in recreational marijuana if they choose to do so. I just think the city of Worcester needs more time to see how this actually will unfold, because this is a fairly new industry across the country and in the state of Ohio.
I guess my only response would be it's not a new industry in the states that I mentioned. And in Ohio, medical marijuana has been around for many years. So I think that there is precedent for whether or not there would be abuse.
That's fine.
And so far, my research has not shown that there's been that abuse.
I just want to remind everyone that 19 miles of a beautiful scenic drive in Wayne County to Loudonville will take you about 24 minutes. There will be a dispensary available, so you don't have to go very far to get both medical and recreational marijuana. It'll be available just right down the road in Loudonville.
And they will get the tax dollars.
They sure will, and they need them. So who am I to take away their tax revenue? As far as creating new jobs, I don't know very many employers in Worcester that aren't seeking employees, desperate for employees, or we don't necessarily need new jobs, we need people to fill them. So I'll be supporting the moratorium, having worked in the mental health industry with many of our agencies in this community and talking to doctors that see patients that have issues. I think the best thing for our community is to continue the moratorium.
Anyone else?
I would just say to the point of, I agree with you. I think small government, absolutely. And I think it's important to give citizens a choice. This particular instance, I don't know that they really have had the choice of whether or not to have a dispensary. That was not necessarily what was voted on. And so, the majority of feedback I've received has been not necessarily by a moral minority. A lot of the people I've spoken with did in fact vote for issue 2 and fully support individual use of recreational marijuana. But I've had several of those people tell me that they are not supportive of a dispensary being here in Worcester. And so, I do kind of agree. A lot of the research I've done as well kind of lines up with what Mr. Myers has just mentioned from a mental health standpoint. I recognize whether we have a dispensary or not is not going to change the fact that people are legally allowed to use it here in Worcester, and they still will use it here in Worcester. However, based on the feedback I've received from the citizens in my ward and other people I've spoken to from around the city, I would have to say that I'll be supporting the moratorium as well tonight, based on those things.
Ms. Kapik, one other comment. I did talk to a Loudonville village representative, and currently in the state, in Columbus, at our state representatives, there are 4 bills pending to change the split of the tax dollars. So the promised tax dollars are subject to be changed by our state legislature. So we're not real sure exactly, those are unclear as what we would get at any rate, so.
Well, I think that our state legislature has 4 bills pending to counteract the citizens' vote, quite frankly, which I have my thoughts on. However, I still think there are a great deal of tax dollars that we will be missing out on. I think people who use medical marijuana, it would be like telling them they couldn't have a drugstore near them. Oh, but you can have a drugstore because you could go to Alliance to go to a drugstore. I think that there are many considerations, and I understand, and I've heard everyone's position on it, but I still can't get past the conflict of there's more mental illness due to alcohol abuse. There's more mental illness due to other things than the use of marijuana. And yes, Scott, you can laugh about it, but I did study this. I did do the research. And we allow that. We don't question. We do not only question, we let people in the Dora area walk around where there's kids all over and drink alcohol. I can't get past the hypocrisy for me.
So I will say, I'm with you, Barb. The will of the people have spoken here in the state of Ohio and in the city of Worcester on their vote for issue 2, and I cannot say no to that. They have spoken, they've spoken loudly, 100%.
I'll say, I thank you for doing all this research because, it's pretty cumbersome when you look at it. And it's not a straight and narrow path because there's a lot of misleading information out there that looks factual. And I think that from both sides of this issue, we've been communicated with from our constituents, and some of them being impassioned and some of them, referencing what they would refer to as facts, whether that's actual or not. And so I've long been vocal about being supportive of having something like this in our community. I thought, initially at the outset that a moratorium would at least be a way to kind of put a cork on it and not shut it down immediately or entirely. I think the idea of canceling the moratorium and allowing for this to potentially come to our citizens, and I understand that maybe there's some flux on what the tax dollar split will be down the road, but I still think, and I stated this 2 meetings ago, people are still going to be doing it here, and for those who say that that's going to cause a burden for our police force or our mental health force or any of our healthcare services. We're still going to have the people using it. They're just going to be giving the tax dollars that could be used to resolve those issues to other communities. And so I would definitely, will be voting no for this tonight.
Anyone else on council? If not, okay, well,
Motion to adopt.
motion to adopt by Ms. Knappich. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Abernathy. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Ms. Knappich,
No.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
No.
Mr. Myers,
No.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
No.
Oops, did I say no, Matt? Yes, on the moratorium.
No, you really meant no.
No to marijuana, yes to the moratorium.
And we'll discuss that over a beer?
I don't drink either, so. sorry.
Okay, well, the moratorium is passed 4-3,
We tried.
so it's been a long conversation, and we'll see if our decision-making was proper. With that, we'll move on to the next ordinance, 2024-38. But before we do that, Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it for us.
Ordinance number 2024-36, an ordinance amending Chapter 162, Management Benefits, and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Knappich, the floor is yours.
Hang on a second, let me get my agenda back up here. I was busy. All right, we discussed this at the last meeting and moved it over to this meeting primarily because we didn't have some people here. This basically, as we discussed at the last meeting, basically puts management employees on par with the union employees with respect to some of the benefit packages as far as leaves and that type of thing. It certainly, to me, makes sense that our management should have the same benefits as our union employees, so I am going to move to suspend the rules.
Don't have to, it's on third reading, so.
It's on third, I thought it was just on second.
No, it's on third.
Oh, because
That
that's,
one's-
I was
yes,
missed that
yes,
meeting.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Then I
yeah.
move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Ms. Knappich.
Second.
Second by Mr. Abernathy. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Ms. Warden,
Yes.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Now, I can see you spilling your water over the last one, but come on.
Not this one.
This is pretty boring.
For another 20 minutes?
For another 3 meetings?
Yeah.
And a public hearing?
Okay, well, takes care of old business. We will move on to our new business. Our first item, Resolution 2024-96, will be introduced by Mr. Malta. It is 3 readings, but before, Ms. Hamilton, please read it for us.
Resolution number 2024-96, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to apply for, accept, and enter into a water supply revolving loan account, WSRLA agreement, on behalf of the City of Worcester for planning, design, and/or construction of water facilities, and designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Malta, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So this is a request to apply for and accept, enter into with the Ohio EPA water supply, $100,000. John is here with us tonight if there's any more detailed necessity on this one. I don't believe there really is. And again, I think we've spoke a lot about this S4 well that we need to definitely have for our water supply. So if there's any other questions, I will refer you to John. Any major details? If not, I would like to.
Real quick. Where's the S4 well located? Is this
gonna be south of S3.
Which is,
South on Prairie Lane.
oh, okay, still in the Prairie Lane area, okay.
Still behind the water plant.
still.
Yep.
Correct.
I think it goes all the way to campground.
Any other questions for Mr. Rice?
You have a question, Mr. Montgomery?
I just wanted to point out that normally we wouldn't apply for a $100,000 loan for this, but it's a forgivable loan, so it's essentially, it'll be a grant.
Is it forgivable, or will it for sure be forgiven?
It
Because,
states it's forgivable. I don't know.
because if it's not a for sure, we could be on the hook for that money.
What are the terms?
However, we would.
Well, we're gonna have to pay one way or the other.
We're gonna have to pay for it anyway, so.
Yeah. Since it's for the PFAS contamination, they have a special category of emerging contaminants in their loans. They're limited for a design loan of $100,000. So that's why we're going for the $100,000. That's the maximum that they're telling us we can get the principal forgiveness on. So that's, like Joel said, normally $100,000, we wouldn't even mess with it. There's a lot of paperwork that goes into it, but if it's forgiven and we get $100,000, it's worth it.
Yeah, because this is for that $1 million well that we just saw.
Right, right.
Budget.
Is there anything in the documentation that says what makes it forgivable or not forgivable?
Well, if it's for emergent contaminants, which this one is, it's for the PFAS, it says it is a forgivable loan.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, so Mr. Malta, what say you?
I move to adopt.
Or to suspend the rules of council?
Please.
Okay. Suspend the rules of council. Is there a second on the
Second.
suspension? Second by Mr. Myers. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the suspension of the rules.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Knappich?
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Malta,
Now I would like to motion to.
motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry, who was that?
Second.
Oh, Mr. Huzay. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Knappich?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution is approved. Move on to Resolution 2024-97. Ms. Hamilton, if you'll please read it for us.
Resolution number 2024-97, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder for drilling water well S4 and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Malta, the floor is yours.
So I think this is a repeat of the same, other than we're going to advertise for bid for the well. If there's any other questions on that, please ask, but otherwise I'm going to suspend the rules on this one as well.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Ms. Knappich?
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
And I would like to move to adopt.
motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Huzay. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Ms. Warden?
Yes.
Ms. Knappich?
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy?
Yes.
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Malta?
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey?
Yes.
Mr. Huzay?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution is approved. Next item, Resolution 2024-98, will be introduced by Ms. Warden. This one is a budgeted item, and with that, Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it for us.
Resolution number 2024-98, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to enter into a contract with CESO, Inc. for professional design services for curb design and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This is a request to enter into contract for engineering design services with CESO Inc. for the construction of drawings, right-of-way plans, and legal descriptions for the upcoming State Route 302 pedestrian improvements project. Most of this project is going to be funded by ODOT, with the city's responsibility being approximately $250,000. The goal for the project is to expand and connect the city's multi-use paths, as well as to better pedestrian access between OSU's campus and downtown. It is a budgeted item, and it's something that we've discussed at previous council meetings under, let's see, Resolution 2024-74. So I will now make a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Ms. Warden. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Knappich. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Okay. Resolution is adopted. Next item, ordinance 2024-38, will also be by Ms. Warden. It is a 3-reading item, and with that, Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it for us.
Ordinance number 2024-38, an ordinance levying special assessments for the improvement of sidewalks on portions of Liberty Street and Walnut Street and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This is a request by the city to levy assessments for the improvements that were made during Phase 4 of the Downtown Streetscape project. These improvements were made along West Liberty Street between PNC Bank and Walnut Street, and along South Walnut Street from West Liberty down to Beaver Alley, just before you get to local routes. Initial estimates for the accessible portion for these improvements, when council first passed this resolution of necessity in 2023, were $47,760. However, the actual accessible portion totaled $78,260. We are going to be limiting the assessment amount to that which was slated in the resolution of necessity, which is good for our business owners downtown because that will save them a pretty significant amount of money. The assessments against each lot and parcel of land can be paid in cash go in to see Andre and he'll take your money. And within 30 days of passage of the ordinance, or once the property owners receive their letters. Is that correct, Mr. Rice? Once they receive that, they have 30 days to pay, or they can choose the option of making 10 annual installments at an interest rate of 6%. I am, just so that we can kind of sew things up here at the end of the year, I'm going to make a motion to place this on third and final reading this evening.
All right, motion to suspend the rules by Ms. Warden. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Huzay. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on suspension of the rules.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
No.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Okay. Rules have been suspended, Ms. Warden.
I would like to make a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Knappich. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance is approved. Next item, Resolution 2024-99. Another item for Ms. Warden, will also be 3 readings, but Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it for us.
Resolution number 2024-99, a resolution authorizing the Director of Administration to enter into a cooperative agreement with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the resurfacing of various streets and allowing for immediate enactment.
Ms. Warden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. This request would allow us to enter into agreement with ODOT to accept funding and execute documents and agreements required for fiscal year 2026 Wooster Street resurfacing project. The project will use the city's fiscal year 26 ODOT large cities funds, and the streets that are slated to be resurfaced in this project have been identified as the next streets that need resurfacing and also happen to be eligible for the large cities funds, are Burbank Road from Quimby to Elm, East Wayne Avenue from Bell to Palmer, East Larwell Street from North Market to Bell, West Liberty Street from Oak Hill to Larwell, and Prairie Lane Road from Old Columbus to the railroad tracks. So, yeah, we're basically just going to be accepting money from ODOT for this project, which is going to save us a significant amount of money because, as we know, streets need repaved, and it's just an expense that we always have to kind of shoulder. So I'm going to move to place this on third and final reading this evening.
Motion to suspend the rules by Ms. Warden. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Myers. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the suspension of the rules.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes,
Ms. Warden,
I will move to adopt.
motion to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Huzay. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll.
Ms. Knappich,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey,
Yes.
Mr. Malta,
Yes.
Mr. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Abernathy,
Yes.
Mr. Huzay,
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Okay, resolution is approved. All right, next item, ordinance 2024-39. This will be by Ms. Knappich. It's a 3 readings, and Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it for us.
Ordinance number 2024-39, an ordinance amending Chapter 160, bidding procedures and contract requirements of the codified ordinances of the City of Worcester, Ohio, by increasing the amount of the limit for competitive bidding.
Ms. Knappich, the floor is yours.
Yes, we've talked about this in the past, and I do see some examples in the information that was provided with the legislation as to where we did exceed or may exceed or could exceed the $50,000 limit that we currently have. It does, it is a significant list. I'm going to leave it on first reading simply because I just don't see any urgency to this.
Okay. We'll say that ordinance 2024-39 has had its first reading. And with that, we'll move on to ordinance 2024-40, which will also be introduced by Ms. Knappich. But Ms. Hamilton, if you'll please read it for us.
Ordinance number 2024-40, an ordinance amending Part 11 zoning of the codified ordinances of the City of Worcester, Ohio to rezone land to C3 General Commercial for property located on the south side of East Smithville Western Road between Wilson Road and Cleveland Road.
Ms. Knappich, the floor is yours.
Yes, this is going to be scheduled for a public hearing prior to our next meeting, so this will stay on first reading tonight.
Okay, thank you. And for our last item this evening, we have ordinance 2024-41. And Ms. Hamilton, if you please read it for us.
Ordinance
Yeah.
number 2024-41, an ordinance authorizing the Director of Administration to enter into contracts with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, to participate in the purchase of machinery, materials, supplies, or other articles of the ODOT, and allowing for immediate enactment.
Mr. Abernathy, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, I don't speak lawyer. And you can tell this was written by a lawyer. Mr. Scavelli.
Would you like me to interpret?
Mr. Scavelli, I'm going to need you to be an interpreter on how to read this, if you don't mind.
So this is, we're looking at 2024, correct? And so what we're looking at is to.
41.
Suspend the purchase of machinery, materials, supplies, or other articles in line for, this is basically for us to basically authorize Joel as the Director of Administration to enter into agreements with ODOT to make purchases beyond things that we have, in the past, we've always put it in each piece of legislation. However, we would always have to do that each and every time, which makes the legislation more complex. In this case, what we can do is we can do one piece of legislation, they actually informed us of this. We can do one piece of legislation that will cover it, and as long as we intend to be permanent, it can cover it hopefully forever. And we can, until it would be repealed, and it would always give the Director of Administration the ability to enter into an agreement with ODOT to buy according to ODOT pricing. So that's what this allows.
So essentially a blanket authority for Joel to go and work with ODOT, negotiate with them and enter into agreement.
So I would qualify that a little bit. Basically, somebody at ODOT was looking at the legislation we passed for the Bryan purchase and said, we would like you to have specific language that says that you're also, not only you're buying it off of us, but you're going to participate in our cooperative purchasing program. So somebody else looking at it with fresh eyes down at ODOT decided they wanted this extra piece of legislation. So in addition to just saying we're going to buy the piece from them, we're like salt, we're going to buy salt from them. We also want you to pass legislation saying you're going to participate in a cooperative purchasing program. It's, like Bob said, this is, government red tape to the nth degree, so they haven't asked necessarily for that before.
So we'd still have to come to council, subject to council, the dollar guidelines for council approval on contracts. It's just that we won't have to include this language in each ordinance to authorize us to participate in the ODOT program. So it's not giving us any authorization we don't have except to blanket participation in the ODOT program.
So you still have to come to us to get the money. It's just saying you don't have to come to us to get the permission to go and negotiate it.
It just adds this takes away the requirement to add the wording that says, here's the money, and it also authorizes the city administration to enter into the agreement through the ODOT purchasing agreement, blah, blah, blah. It takes that part out, because then we always have that permission, so long as we've approved the money.
Yeah.
And it only came to our attention because the Bryan one didn't have that language. And then they said, well, why don't you just do a blanket one? That way you don't have to worry about that.
Got it.
And it's all the ODOT purchasings are state bid contracts, so the prices are set. I don't know if this would apply for like buying vehicles and things, if we got to that point, if this is strictly ODOT, but, similarly, that could be done as well. Because once we approve the purchase, buying it off the state agreement or the ODOT salt agreement, it's pre-negotiated, preset.
This has no
It sure is
effect
what Ms.
on,
Hamilton has to say.
well, I was going to ask, because 9 out of 10 pieces of legislation that I ever introduce start with that.
Right.
And so, but I know that that's not us purchasing anything, that's entering into an agreement, more of a contract level.
This
So
feels
that
like-
isn't a change.
This
Okay.
feels like a lot's going to shift from you to me now.
Yeah, great.
The difference would be, so right now, we already have authority to purchase at equivalent to state prices. We already have that blanket authority. This would be just to allow us to participate in state contracts at those same prices without having to put that in every piece of legislation going forward.
But you still have to come to us for the contracts.
We would.
So, just so I had no sense of urgency, do you have any purchases you need to move on since we are kind of in the
Yeah.
winter season? So is there some urgency on this?
Yeah, the piece that you passed last time on the Bryan mixer, or whatever that was.
Okay.
We can't move forward with that because we didn't have all our dots and chills.
So either we could pass this, or that could come back before us to add that to that resolution.
Yeah, there's-
Resolution.
That'd be the other way
appropriate-
around.
Yeah.
We could go back and do that.
There's a fix.
Is this in perpetuity, or does this
So
authority need to be authorized year after
they
year as
view
well?
it, if we consider it permanent, they consider it in perpetuity. Otherwise, they consider it to expire every 2 years. So since we have termed this as an ordinance, our ordinances are generally things that we do more permanently, so we are considering this to be permanent. So unless they object in the future and say that we can't do it that way, we consider this to be in perpetuity.
Gotcha.
Until such time as council would ever say, we want out of that, we're going to stop that.
Sure.
It doesn't change. I mean, pieces of legislation would still come. They would be missing a couple words in one of the whereases would be the only thing.
We're just taking a little language off the legislation. Got it. Okay.
And that was at ODOT's suggestion, you know, after they saw.
And right now, your brine purchase is held up,
Yes.
needing this, okay.
Well, it was raining when I came in today, so.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
supposed to
we're
get,
good.
it's supposed to get down into the teens this weekend, so I'm going to motion to suspend rules.
Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Abernathy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Warden. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the rules. Motion to suspend the rules. Thank you.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
No,
Okay.
I just don't see any urgency to it.
So it's, the rules have been suspended, so
Yeah, I
at
was
this
gonna say,
point.
It's just me. You can still vote on
Abernathy, you-
it.
Motion to adopt.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gaffey. Ms. Hamilton, please call the roll on the adoption.
Mr. Abernathy.
Yes.
Mr. Malta.
Yes.
Mr. Huzay.
Yes.
Mr. Gaffey.
Yes.
Ms. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Knappich.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we did pretty well. I was estimating 2 hours. We're inside that window, so that's all good. No one signed up for miscellaneous.
I would have liked to.
So at this point, Mr. Huzay, do you have anything?
I would like to say.
I just want to see what, I just want to see what the contract language was, but not that we were going to get to the house.
I'll be back next. All right.
Mr. Huzay, what do you have for us in miscellaneous?
Yeah, I'm just thankful and appreciative on the discussion around the recreational marijuana. I think it's still an evolving issue that we need to keep our thumbs on the pulse of and see what happens from the state and surrounding communities. I'm glad that the moratorium's in place. We'll look forward to revisiting it in a couple years. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good Christmas, New Year's holiday season, and we'll see everybody in 2025.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Abernathy?
I appreciate the good debate today. You know, I know that this is one of the few times our council is not unanimous. We generally have a good unanimous council, and I think it's, even though some may disagree with how it went, it shows how government can work where people can have civil conversation. You know, may disagree on the outcome, but the civil conversation where both sides can share their opinion and we can still walk out of here together. So I appreciate that this council can do that. And the only other thing I will say is, you know, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Everybody be safe out there. And that's all I'm going to add. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Knappich?
Yes, thank you. I also appreciate the active debate that we have and everybody having their own opinions or positions. I do disagree that we will be revisiting this in a few years. I think we have passed our opportunity. I do not think this will come before the city of Worcester in the future, so I think we can pretty much confirm to our constituents that we will not ever be having a dispensary until some licenses open up, which wouldn't be for some time of year, and we have passed up a lot of money to do so. But I appreciate everybody's position, and I wish everybody a Happy New Year and a very merry and safe holiday season.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gaffey?
I'll just second the comments before me about just, you know, it is nice to be able to be in a group here where we can disagree on some things, but, you know, not feel like we got to jump over the table and, you know, take it further. So I definitely appreciate that.
I would be at a disadvantage, so.
I definitely appreciate that, though. And, yeah, like everybody else has said, you know, just wish everybody safe and happy Christmas and New Year's season.
Thank you. Ms. Warden?
I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I'll see you all soon.
All right. Mr. Malta?
I will repeat that. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all. Thank you for coming, and and we'll see you next year.
Very good. Mr. Myers?
A couple things real quick. I did attend the community, or kind of group that Ashley had regarding the Christmas run pool. And first of all, I think they did an outstanding job. They did a lot of homework, was well presented, a lot of ideas, everything from, well, first of all, there's not room in that location for all the things they proposed, so we won't be spending all of that money. But we'll have to be picking and choosing what we feel is most popular based on what some of the other pools in the area have put in. So I think you'll all find it very interesting when you get a chance to look at those. And I just want to say well done to the city on putting all that together. Congratulations in order for Mr. Abernathy for passing his first budget. Thank you. Well done. And Merry Christmas to everyone. Have a happy New Year. Motion to adjourn.
And a motion
Second.
to adjourn, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned until next year.
Did we not let Mr. Barnett talk?
I don't think he had anything to say today.
Oh, he just wanted to make his presence felt.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you should.